When you're shopping for art supplies, do you ever look at the total and think, is all of this really worth it? I get it, the cost adds up so fast. And don't get me wrong, I love buying art supplies as much as everyone else, but today, instead of focusing on the supplies and stencils that we can purchase, we are going to look around our house and find the items that we can use for free. You really don't have to look very far for amazing gel plate textures. Some of my favorites come in shipping boxes, in my grocery shopping bags, and even in junk mail. So by the end of this video, you will have loads of new texture ideas to try right away, and no shopping trip required. And the reason that I love these materials is because they all behave in different ways and there's different options on how to use each of them. And that helps make your prints uniquely yours.
So let's dive in with the first category, mesh bags. And stay with me because within each of these 6 categories, I'm giving you multiple examples and options for your gel plate printing. So as you can see here, there's several different kinds of bags that I've received in my groceries from like oranges, limes, and lemons, sometimes with avocados. And sometimes I use my brayer to roll out this texture on the gel plate. But you can see there, when I was holding it with my hand started to get paint on it. So there's some other options I'll show you in just a moment as well. But I love this texture. I actually have a stencil that's very similar to this, but I love that this is a free option to get this kind of grid pattern. Here's an example of me pulling that texture on this metallic blue color. And a bonus on this one is the like crinkly marks left from the paper. I love that as well. Here you'll see I started to use my hand and then grabbed a scrap piece of paper that I use to press on top of gel plate papers. And then the opposite pattern comes through on that scrap paper. So there's now like a green grid over on my scrap paper as well as the gel plate. And then one final example there and what a final pull looks like when the mesh bag is one of the textures involved in that session. So there's several different textures in this pull, but if you look closely, especially around the edges, you can see the mesh bag texture. Next up for our second category is plastic packaging. Again, a lot of these I find in my groceries, like this one, for example, is from Cookies. I think this one was also from Cookies. There's 2 of them there. This was from some little art supplies that were that shape, and this one's from Eggs. So keep in mind that anytime you're getting these interesting plastic containers with your food or with other things, they can be used on your gel plate. So here's an example of using this cookie tray where I'm stamping it into the paint. And then I can flip and use that piece to stamp on a different gel plate. And so it's kind of the reverse effect there. Here's another example of stamping it into a more fluid type paint. And then I'm going to segue straight into our next category, which is cardboard. And in the cardboard section, there are loads of examples, so stick with me because I have lots of favorite cardboard pieces. But in this first example, you can see where I used the cookie tray first and then a piece of cardboard. And in this poll, you can see the example of both in the result. So it's something as simple as these small pieces of cardboard that are creating such unique textures, and I love it. In this final pull here, there are definitely 2 different things going on. The circular motion is from a stencil, and then a lot of the blue markings are from cardboard pieces. In this next piece, you can see where I've peeled part of the cardboard back, and it's showing the corrugated lines, which then there's variety in the texture that it's creating, and I love that. So on this pole, you can see some of those lines that were created by the cardboard and then some of those bigger sections with the darker color. Here, the paint was already on the cardboard, so I'm using it as a stamp, which just creates a really unique texture in a few different places. So I think it's fun to see like all of these different ways. Like here, I'm only using the edge of the cardboard, and so it's creating just a little taste of this color on the top of this print. Here, I want you to notice that I'm pushing the cardboard down and then stamping that paint on the bottom and the top. So it's also an option for you to like move the paint around your gel plate. Same here, I'm stamping it down, moving some of the paint around, and then doing this really light layer on top of this print. So within this cardboard category, I have several like subcategories. And right now I'm going to move on to these corrugated cardboard pieces that have come in all sorts of different shipping materials and boxes of things. So here I'd like you to notice that I'm pulling down on the piece of cardboard so it creates this like deeper line in the paint. So it's like, yes, you can stamp straight down, but I often pull the cardboard towards me to create like a stronger line. And here's what that pull looks like. And here's an example where I had some of the paint left over from those lines, and then I also used a piece of small cardboard, and here's the combination of those two. One of my favorite pieces is this longer, skinnier piece of cardboard. Again, you can see I'm pulling it down towards me, and you can see that I'm pushing in different sections. I'm not putting equal pressure all over the gel plate. I'm kind of touching in only some spots, and then that gives you like variety. Again, like different lines in different parts of that pull. Now with this one, instead of doing just straight lines, I'm bouncing around and doing the lines in all sorts of different directions. And this one is really cool because then you've got different directional lines, which is really fun. The same circular piece, but this time I am only going in straight lines. And again, you can see that I'm kind of pulling. And when I look at this, I'm realizing it didn't catch as much as I wanted, and I go back in to some areas and really push the cardboard harder to pull up some of that paint. And I really enjoyed this pull. I really enjoy the lines that creates. It just finishes it off. This small square corrugated piece, I flipped and turned directions. So there's like vertical, horizontal, like in a grid. So the first pull looks like this, and I did it on white paper, which is kind of a bummer. It's not as cool as it could be. The second pull was not really a success, and it's finally on this third pull where you can see a hint of the corrugated lines behind, and then one of my favorite colors, Arctic, scattered throughout. This is actually one of my favorite pieces ever. Now, this is another one of those examples where I do kind of have a combination of cardboard and stencil. So at the beginning, I used the cardboard, which would kind of be like the quote-unquote flat side, but see how it's never really flat. It creates all these different shapes over on the larger gel plate. Then, since I kind of tore this box up and ripped pieces back, I'm able to also use that corrugated line, and I'm jumping around using that. Then I do end up using a stencil, so when I pull, you can see those really different shapes that were left behind from the box, and then you can see all the cool corrugated line pieces. Now, one of my favorite types of cardboard is actually from coin boxes from the bank. So, I know I said that we're using items from around the house, but I would highly recommend you go make friends with one of your local bank tellers and ask them for the boxes from coins, because part of the box has these circle pieces where they can see through to see the coins inside. And it just makes this really cool effect when you lift up and it leaves all these little circles behind, and I love it. This is probably my favorite type of cardboard. And then in this one, a really messy example, I'm pushing inside the circles, and I do have gloves on, as you can see, but when I'm pushing this specifically inside these little circles, it leaves almost like a little outline. You'll see it better here. When I lift up the cardboard, you'll see like the little outline, the little white circles. And when you're layering up paint in different ways, that little leftover white circle ends up being really cool. And then this is my last example of the coin box cardboard. And this time I'm not pushing inside of the circles, so it leaves a full circle left, and you can see that in this final pull. And it's the circle texture mixed with several other textures in one print. Next up is a cardboard spool. So this used to have ribbon on it. And what I'd love for you to notice is how when I'm rolling it across, like right there, it made like a really large spot. So whenever I pull this up, there's like this really cool, almost like ribbony looking effect that comes through. Next up are paper towel rolls, and you can use these with some paper left on, without paper left on. The options are kind of endless. In this first one, there's no paper on the tube, and I'm just simply rolling that slowly across, and it creates these cool diagonal lines. So while I have a little moment here in the video, I would love to know which texture has surprised you so far, or which one are you really excited to try? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Here's an example of the cardboard with the paper towel left, and since it's a paper towel that has these cool circles on it, you can see that these circles are being left behind on the gel plate. So in this pull here, you'll probably be able to notice several of the different textures we've talked about. You can see the circles from the coin box, and then you can see the texture from the paper towel roll and from cardboard. And here I'm using it to lift up paint, and then I'm using the edge to create circles all around the gel plate. So I'm kind of like turning it to get all the parts of the circle, and then up in the top corner I'm tapping over and over again to create the circles. So in this final pull here, you can see where the cardboard circles were, and then some of the bank box circles. I had like a whole circle theme going on, but you can see those throughout and from all the different layers. And moving on to my next example, I believe this is called like a honeycomb panel or some type of honeycomb cardboard, because if I were to rip one of the flat pieces off the top or bottom, inside the pattern that the cardboard is making is a honeycomb shape. So I didn't peel it apart, I'm just using the side to create these lines. And I wasn't expecting this texture at all. It's kind of fun, like I'll gather supplies and I really have no idea what it's going to do. And this one really surprised me. I can definitely tell I'll be using that one again. Here's the second example where I used like 2 different colors. And so it's the same texture across but with different paint colors. And then here is the last cardboard example. This piece of cardboard came in some packaging and it had like a perforated line. When I tore it, it had these little edges like with spacing in it, and the texture is really cool. So just always pay attention to the different packaging and cardboard pieces that you find. Next up is non-art papers. I wasn't really sure how to label this, but it's a lot of like packing papers and things like that. So I'm kicking it off with this brown packing paper, and rather than using like the crinkle and pressing it down flat, I'm using the edge. And I'm just kind of stamping all around and lifting up the paint. And I really enjoy the texture that this leaves behind. So it's just these really subtle, thin lines. Here's another example I did with different colors on the square gel plate. And then this last example, same technique, but notice how I pulled the paper sometimes too. Rather than just like tapping it, sometimes I pulled it. And then this one's pretty straightforward, just using my hand to press down on the packing paper. And this next one is junk mail envelopes, which really is like less about the texture it's leaving on the gel plate, which is like what a lot of these other ones were. And this one's more just, it's an option to print on. Because since it's a free, non-art paper, I wanted to add it. And I especially love the little window in there and how the paint layers on top of that plastic window. Next up, consider making masks for your gel plate. You could use chipboard or thicker papers that come in junk mail or like ads, things like that. And then this next one is another type of packing paper. I loved how it was just crinkled up and it's like stuck that way. So this created a really cool texture, and it's so different than like a flat piece of packing paper. And layered up, I just keep pressing it on the gel plate to keep repeating the texture. And then here's what that pull looks like. This paper here is a paper that would come in packaging with like essential oils, and I believe it was like in case something would leak, maybe it's like to soak it up. But when I use that on the gel plate and then I can press it onto another piece of paper, it also acts as a stamp. So I really like that texture. And then this type of paper, it's almost like an earth-friendly version of bubble wrap, and it's also called a honeycomb texture. I like to pull this and let it kind of like catch on the paint. And then I am showing you that I did sneak in a piece of cardboard there. And so when I pull this up, you can see again multiple different layers. You can see like where the honeycomb pieces were pulled and then the corrugated cardboard. Next up is bubble wrap, and I wanted to segue from that honeycomb type paper to the actual plastic bubble wrap. And I thought about not adding this to the video, but I feel like it is just such a staple with gel printing and free options. But I wanted to focus on all these different shapes and sizes of bubble wrap. So this one's almost like an almond shape, and I find that so unique and different, so I had to save that and use that for printing. And then here's an example of a really large bubble wrap, which I also think I don't see this one as often, so I had to save some of that. And then I feel like this is the most common size of bubble wrap, but I just wanted to point out that I don't push with equal pressure all the way across. I push in different parts of the bubble wrap. And then I did sneak in a little bonus there with a lid, and that is what this combination looks like. The last category is items from nature. Again, I just felt like if I didn't mention freebies from outside, then the video wouldn't be complete. So I'm just highlighting a few things that we can get from outside to make really cool prints, like leaves and grass and pieces from trees, and then layering that up in lots of different unique ways.
So I really hope this video gives you permission to explore the items you already have around your home and to discover new textures on your gel plate. And it's kind of cool because this proves that you really don't need much to make beautiful art. And if you have a pile of prints stacked up nearby, stay tuned because in my next video, I'm going to show you how to spot a finished piece of artwork inside your prints and get it framed in under 10 minutes. If that video is already posted, it will be here on the screen for you to click. And as always, thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next video.